In 1922, a shop superintendent in New Jersey was told he could not hire another worker. So he built a machine that made every worker twice as productive. That machine changed American construction forever. Raymond DeWalt was born in 1885 in Oakville, Pennsylvania. His father ran a wagon shop. From the age of 10, he worked alongside him, building wheels for horse-drawn wagons. He learned the cost of every cut by watching his father charge for one. By his early 20s, he had left the wagon shop and taken jobs at a paper goods manufacturer in Shippensburg, and then at a construction firm in Seabrook, New Jersey. By the early 1920s, he was shop superintendent at Seabrook Farms, a large agricultural operation that built its own crates and boxes for produce shipment. The farm needed thousands of wooden crates a season. Workers spent entire days cutting boards on stationary saws, then walking back to the assembly tables to nail them together. The company president would not let him increase the payroll. DeWalt later said he simply had to get more work out of the men he had. That sentence built an empire. DeWalt did not want a faster saw. He wanted a saw that did not require the carpenter to move. He wanted the blade to come to the work. In the workshop at Seabrook Farms in 1922, he built it. A circular blade mounted in a yoke. The yoke suspended from a horizontal arm. The arm attached to a vertical column at the back of a workbench. The blade could slide along the arm, raise and lower, swing in any direction, and tilt for bevels. One electric motor drove it directly with no belts, no pulleys, nothing to fail. The operator stood at the front and pulled the blade through the wood. He called it the Wonder Worker. It could perform 29 different cutting operations without changing its setup: ripping, cross-cutting, mitering at any angle, tenons, bevels, routing, shaping, sanding, grinding, and boring. DeWalt put it plainly. The Wonder Worker could do everything except a handspring or tie itself into a knot. He filed his first patent on January 27, 1923. In 1924, he founded DeWalt Products Company in Leola, Pennsylvania. He was 39 years old. Within a year, a contracting firm in Washington state wrote a testimonial that DeWalt printed in his catalog. They said they were producing finer interior finish work on the job site than the average dedicated mill workshop could manage. Read that again. Job site cuts more precise than a mill. The Wonder Worker did not just make construction faster, it made it better. By 1927, Sears Roebuck was boasting that DeWalt's saw contributed to manufacturing 50 ready-cut houses every single day. Every developed nation that built houses out of wood needed Raymond DeWalt's machine. And for the first crucial years, nobody else had one. The patent was his. The design was his. Then he sold it. The exact circumstances remain sparse in the historical record. What is known is this. By the late 1920s, with the company growing, DeWalt sold DeWalt Products Company and his patents to two investors named Paul Gardner and Isaac Rutt. The reason, according to multiple accounts, was that DeWalt had decided to leave manufacturing entirely to found a religious communal order. He was not yet 45 years old. The man who had reshaped American construction walked away from his own company at the moment it was beginning to dominate an industry. What he did next is the part the company never puts in its own history. He went back to teaching. He took a job training young tradesmen at the National Youth Administration shops in York, Pennsylvania during the Depression. Then he became a shop teacher at Mechanicsburg High School in Cumberland County, the same county where he had grown up. For decades, until his retirement in 1949, Raymond DeWalt spent his working days teaching teenagers how to use the kind of tools he had himself invented. He kept filing patents, at least 10 over his lifetime, but he was no longer running a tool company. He was running a shop class in a building 12 miles from his childhood home. The men who bought his company kept the name. They kept growing. In 1947, the company reorganized as DeWalt Inc. In 1949, it was sold to American Machine and Foundry, a New York conglomerate that owned everything from bowling alleys to atomic energy contracts. In 1960, American Machine and Foundry sold DeWalt to Black & Decker, the largest power tool manufacturer in the United States. Black & Decker had been founded in 1910 by S. Duncan Black and Alonzo Decker in a rented garage in Baltimore with $600 in capital. In 1916, they had patented the world's first portable handheld electric drill with a pistol grip and trigger switch. The design they came up with in a Baltimore garage in 1916 is essentially the design every cordless drill on Earth still uses. Black & Decker bought DeWalt for its profitable radial arm saw line and its 90% brand recognition among American carpenters. They ran it as a subsidiary for 30 years. Then, in 1989, Black & Decker sold the radial arm saw manufacturing operation to two of its own executives. The machines were gone, the factories were gone, but the name stayed. Nobody wanted it. Nobody was using it. It sat dormant in the Black & Decker trademark portfolio, while the rest of the power tool world moved in a direction nobody in Baltimore had anticipated. In January 1991, a hardware store owner in Pennsylvania looked a Black & Decker sales representative in the eye and said something the man could not argue with. The owner said he gave Makita 10 feet of shelf space and Black & Decker 10 feet of shelf space. Makita outsold them 8-1, and he asked what they were going to do about that. The Black & Decker representative was Joseph Galley, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Power Tools. He had heard the same sentence in 100 different stores across the country, from 100 different managers, the same number, 8-1. He drove back to the office in Towson, Maryland, and stared at a problem that had no obvious answer. Somewhere in that office, sitting in a filing cabinet, was the answer. It had been sitting there for 30 years. While Black & Decker was managing its radial arm saw business through the 1970s and the 1980s, a Japanese company called Makita had been quietly doing something nobody in America took seriously until it was too late. Makita had entered the United States market in the late 1970s and focused on one specific buyer that every American tool company had overlooked. Not the industrial buyer, not the weekend consumer, but the tradesman. The carpenter, the electrician, the plumber who bought his own tools at retail and used them 8 hours a day on a job site. That market was worth $432 million, and it was growing at 9% a year. By 1991, Makita controlled nearly half of it. Black & Decker had 10%. In accounts where both brands had equal shelf space, Makita outsold Black & Decker 8-1. The tools were not the problem. Blind tests showed Black & Decker's professional line was comparable to Makita on every technical metric. In some categories, it was superior. But when a carpenter walked into a hardware store and saw Black & Decker, he did not see a professional tool. He saw the same brand as his wife's hairdryer. He was not going to bring that name onto a job site. One retail executive at the time said carpenters wanted the most macho brand name on the worksite. They did not want the same brand as their blender. Joseph Galley understood the problem precisely. Black & Decker did not have a quality problem. It had a name problem. The solution was not to fix the tools. The solution was to find a different name. Michael Hams, the executive vice president who had moved to Black & Decker from Chrysler in 1990, brought a concept with him. He called it the Acura concept. When Honda wanted to sell luxury cars, it did not put the Honda name on them. It created a separate name entirely, Acura. The cars were fundamentally Honda engineering. The name carried no baggage. Galley ran a brand study on every name in the Black & Decker portfolio. The results came back and one name stood out from everything else. 70% of tradespeople recognized it. 51% expressed purchase interest before they had ever seen the product. The name was DeWalt, the dormant trademark sitting in a filing cabinet for 3 years. A name attached in tradespeople's memories to quality stationary woodworking equipment from a different era entirely. A name with no baggage because barely anyone under 40 could tell you what it had been. In 1992, Black & Decker relaunched DeWalt. The tools were the same professional line that had been losing to Makita 8-1. The quality had not changed. The engineering had not changed. The factories had not changed. What changed was the color and the name on the box. The charcoal gray professional line was repainted yellow, not because yellow tested as the most appealing color, because yellow was the only gender-neutral color not already claimed by a major power tool brand. Makita was teal, Milwaukee was red, Bosch was blue. Yellow meant safety equipment on construction sites. Yellow meant caution tape and hard hats and the job site itself. Yellow meant work. The price was set slightly above Makita, deliberately. A tool that costs more must be better. That is how tradespeople think. The tools were backed by a 48-hour service center repair guarantee. If a tool went down, the company promised to fix or replace it within 2 days. The market responded immediately. In one hardware store in York, Pennsylvania, the owner who had watched Makita outsell Black & Decker 8-1 was now watching DeWalt outsell Makita 3-2. Black & Decker's share of the professional tradesman market went from 8% in 1991 to more than 40% by 1995. 4 years. 8-1 against becoming 40% of the market. In 1994, DeWalt acquired ELU, a German woodworking power tool manufacturer. ELU's engineering went into the DeWalt platform. By 2001, DeWalt was selling more than 200 different power tools and 800 accessories. A dormant name that had been sitting unused in 1989 was, by the end of the decade, generating nearly $1 billion in annual revenue. That was 20% of the entire Black & Decker company's revenue from a name that had been worth nothing 3 years before the relaunch. Raymond DeWalt died on May 8, 1961, in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. He was 75 years old. He had spent his last decade teaching shop class to teenagers in a small town 12 miles from where he was born. The company bearing his name had just been sold to Black & Decker 6 days before he died. He never saw the yellow tools. He never saw the job sites covered in his initials. He never saw a carpenter in Georgia or a plumber in Oregon reach for a tool with his name on it because nothing else on the shelf would do. He sold his company before he turned 45 and went back to teaching. He believed the next generation needed to know how to build things with their hands. He spent 35 years acting on that belief in a high school shop class, while the brand he created changed hands 3 times and eventually became the most recognized professional power tool name in the world. Today, DeWalt is a $15 billion brand inside Stanley Black & Decker. It manufactures in 7 countries. Its yellow tools are on job sites in 150 countries. The company that Raymond DeWalt built in a New Jersey agricultural operation and sold before it reached its first pinnacle has outlived him by more than 60 years. He never wanted to run a company. He wanted to stop his carpenters from walking back and forth to the saw. He solved that problem in 1922 and moved on. The name he put on the solution kept working long after he stopped caring what happened to it. Some ideas are larger than the people who have them. Raymond DeWalt's was one of those. The president would not let him hire another worker, so he built a machine instead. Everything that followed was just the world catching up to that one decision.